Hello everyone, I'm Allie. Welcome to this paint along session. We just restarted the video, so I hope that some of you are going to make it over. We had an issue before where you couldn't see the whole screen. So if somebody who is watching could jump in and let me know if you can see the whole screen now. I'm crossing my fingers that this is going to work. Sometimes Facebook just does this to us. Elena says yay, Judy says thumbs up. Okay, so we're all good, guys? Wonderful. You never know what, Facebook's gonna throw at you, but at least I have you guys here. You've got my back and you let me know right away. Okay, super. And it looks like everybody is moving on over from the other video. So I love it. I'm so happy to see that. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Teresa. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through my little spiel again real quick because I know we always have new people. So I do these weekly paint-alongs every Monday at 5 Eastern, and many of you paint along with me. I'm going with the name. So I offer a download of the outlines. We are painting this fun tulip panel here. And so you can get that download on my website. It's just a template to trace. So you use like transfer paper or you chalk the back of the page to transfer the outlines. And so you can do that before the paint along and then paint with me live, or many of you just download it ahead of time and then you watch the replay afterwards. So either way, if this is your first time watching this, you didn't know about the outlines, you can still head over to my website, LAK Studio, and grab yours if you would like to. Hi, Angela in Holland, and hi, Bill. Bill said you can see all of me. Wonderful. Glad we got that figured out. And Letitia in Fort Worth. I love it. Thank you everyone for jumping in and saying hi. It's always fun to see all your little messages. So, all right. Well, we're getting started a few minutes late because we had those technical difficulties, but let's just jump in and start painting. I'm so excited to paint this one. I shared the reference image that we're painting that my paint friend Suzanne shared in our group the other day that I chose to use for my reference, and a lot of you I know were really excited about it, and I am too because it was a really beautiful photo. So all right, here we go. I'm gonna adjust the camera so that you can see the reference image and the panel, and hopefully some of my palette. I'm trying to get that in there for you all too. Sorry, it's a little bit wonky, but let's see. I think we can see everything now. And looks good. Elena, you're painting with me live. I love it. I love seeing the paintings. So if you guys don't know, many of the people who paint with me live, they all post their paintings in my group, Allie's Paint Friends. And that's a free group for everybody to join in. So even if you don't paint, you can join in and see all the beautiful work that is created in these paint-alongs. But it's always fun to see what everyone else did with the same subject. So yeah, that's a fun thing. So check out Allie's Paint Friends if you're not in it already. All right, let's see. Judith says taking notes, painting later. That works too. All right, so if you've got your outlines, you transferred them, and then my instructions were just to paint over them using a skinny brush. And we made this purple from alizarin crimson, Payne's gray, and white. But you could really make kind of a grayish purple with any color recipe. The outlines really don't matter. I add the white to it so it's not too dark of an outline. We just want to cover up those transfer lines, which are kind of like a graphite line. So my first step is always to start mapping out the shadows of whatever it is that I'm painting. And I make a kind of dirty purple from Payne's gray and alizarin crimson, and I just water that down quite a bit and I start finding the shadows. So that's what we're going to do. So I am using flat tip brushes. This is a number 4. These brushes are Blick Essentials, which I've been pretty happy with, and you can get like a 10 or 12 pack of them for like 12 bucks from Dick Blick online. So I like that, and we are using golden fluid acrylic paints. If you don't have the fluid acrylics, you can certainly use heavy body. I just like the smoother fluid acrylics, and if you don't have golden, just use what you can get your hands on. I prefer golden. I think it's the best, but I think you can create a good painting with whatever you have on hand. All right, so let's start putting this wash in. So again, this is alizarin crimson and Payne's gray, and I'm just looking for the dark shapes. So I can see that this tulip is obviously much brighter than the background behind it. So I'm just gonna start washing in the background dark. And I'm not being too worried about staying right at my lines. That's kind of funny. I have the paint like repelling right there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Maybe you can. I must have my finger must have been greasy or something when I touched the panel, but that's gonna be okay because as I layer the paint, that won't matter. It's just because the paint is so watered down right now. That happens sometimes where you get a spot that it repels the water. And I am painting on smooth wood panels that I put like 3 coats of gesso on. Let's see, I'm looking at your comments here. Let's see. Bill said, does transparent acrylic work as well as heavy body paint? So Bill, I like to use the fluid acrylics because I feel like they have more pigment to them and it's easy just to water them down and get them to flow. I don't tend to build up a lot of texture in my work. So that's why I choose the fluid acrylics. But you know, it's kind of personal preference. If you like to have thicker paint and those kind of fat loaded brush strokes, go use the heavy body. But I like the fluid. All right. Got a little drip there. Okay, so now looking at this flower, I'm just gonna work my way. I usually kind of work from like top left over, but you don't have to. That's just kind of what I do. And I am gonna try to keep looking back at the comments. So if you are watching live, lucky you get to ask me questions while I'm working here, and I'm gonna do my best to keep track of what you guys are asking and hopefully be able to give you an answer. And if I don't catch it live, I always do scroll back through all the comments afterwards and try to just type in an answer because I don't wanna miss any of your great questions. I have several of those weird spots where it's repelling the paint. I hope that doesn't keep up. So I'm just kind of looking at each side of the line that's laid down and I'm comparing which side is light and which side is dark. And when I was choosing these lines, I was tracing my image, which I just printed out in black and white. And when I traced over it, I chose to select just the basic contour lines and then also just kind of choosing the major areas of highlight and major areas of shadow, and that's what I was tracing over. You don't want to try to trace everything because it'll get too busy. You don't really need your underpainting to be so busy. You just want to know where the basic shapes are. Amy says, thank you for the tulips. You're welcome, Amy. I love tulips too. This one makes me really happy. I was very excited to jump in and do this one this week. And I'm just mixing up a little bit more of my kind of purpley gray tone here. And we'll just keep moving along. So here we've got it dark on this side. We've got it dark on that side of the petal. And then here on this one, it flips where the edge of the tulip is darker than the blue in the background. So we're gonna catch how that flips right there. And then again, this is dark here. There's gonna be a little highlight on top of that edge, but I'll catch that later. Then we've got a pretty dark fold in here. My paint's super watered down right now. And this is all pretty dark. I feel like tulips are pretty easy to paint because there's not a lot of petals to be keeping track of. So that's part of my thought process too. I wanted to give you guys something that would be easy to do in a 1-hour painting because I know The last couple of them, we had a lot of flowers included in the demo and they turned out gorgeous, but I also know that that's a lot to paint in an hour, so thought maybe something a little more simplified would make some of you guys happy. I always paint from either my iPad screen or my laptop screen. I think I'm just gonna wash all that in because it's so much easier to see the colors when it's on a screen compared to like a printout. I talked about that the other day, how really, I mean, if you have access to a screen, I would definitely say look at your image that way rather than printing out a paper version of it, because in a printout you just lose so much. So that's one of my go-to little tricks there. All right, moving along. Let me know if you guys are having any thoughts on this, or let me know if you're painting with me. I know Elena said you're painting with me. Anyone else? I don't know if I probably missed a few other comments there. They were going by quickly, but yeah, I would love to know if you're painting, and then of course I can't wait to see it afterwards. Always fun. It always makes my night when those paintings start making their way into our group and I get to see them. And if you don't join Allie's Paint Friends group and you just post it on your own page, of course I love it when you tag my studio. Always a good thing. I always appreciate that. All right, that's all pretty dark right there. We're just gonna do all that dark. Okay, looking at the vase here, it's pretty dark. Got this dark shadow going down the handle. Let's see, Sharon says, is this your standard steps in setting up your paintings? Yeah, Sharon, it pretty much is. This is what I do. I get the outlines on there and then I start washing in the shapes and shadows, and I almost always use the same color recipe for this. It's the alizarin crimson and Payne's gray mixture. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do no matter what I'm painting. Of course, I will approach the paintings differently as I go on, but like in these early stages, it is a pretty standard recipe that I do. All right, so now we've got a general wash over most of it that's kind of indicating what's light and what's dark. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to mix up a new batch of this paint color with less water. So now I'm going to use like pretty much just the straight paint with a little bit of water. And this was alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. So the same two colors as before, just with a little less water now. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to push the darkest darks even darker. So it's very dark in the background up here, and that's going to make this flower kind of pop out at me. So I'm just looking for those places where it's the very darkest. And we'll just pop that in. It's pretty dark right here. So this is just going to start to give us some more form because now we've got different levels of shadow here. It's kind of dark inside the tulip here. Again, this is alizarin crimson, Payne's gray. Got a little chunk of dark there. It's pretty dark in between these two petals. So I mentioned the other day I posted a video that kind of showed a little bit of how I edited this image and what it looked like beforehand, because the reference image looked a little bit different from this. So I cropped it down, I put a filter on it, and then I also, in Photoshop, I took out some of the petals because it was a little bit too busy. So I do a lot of that editing before I even start my painting. And that's why I wanted to put out my new course, which just released this weekend, my digital editing basics course, where I actually teach you guys exactly how to do that in Photoshop and in some other apps. So if you don't know, digital editing basics is now open for enrollment, and it's designed specifically for painters who want to learn how to use like Photoshop and some other apps to edit your reference images and just make things a lot easier. I think I just missed a comment. Oh. Sorry, I was trying to find your comments again. I missed it, but I didn't want to bump it and lose you guys. Thank you, Terry. Terry says it's a great class. I've already gotten some really great reviews on that class, so I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm just continuing to work my way around, looking for those darkest shapes. Moving around. Still using my number 4 brush, my number 4 flat tip brush. All right, looking around, maybe a little bit of dark in there, a little bit of dark in there. Okay, I think that might be about all of the dark shadow that I want to put in for right now. Oh, we've got a little bit on the rim here of the picture. It's pretty dark right here. Oh, a little bit on that stem, maybe a little bit more on that stem too. Okay, I think that's good. So now we've got our 2 levels of shadow in there. Let's see, someone just asked, why those colors? So in these early stages, it doesn't exactly matter what color you're using to wash in these tones. But I like kind of a warm, dirty purple because our natural shadows do have kind of a purple hue to them. So this is just kind of the recipe that I find that works best for me. So once I've got my shadows mapped out, now I'm going to look for my complementary color underpaintings. So this is also probably going to seem kind of strange if you haven't seen any of my work before, but what I do after I find these shadows is I pick a color that's basically opposite on the color wheel. It's not always the true opposite. I usually just kind of switch from warm to cool. So let's start with the color that we are going to do in the background. So the background is all different tones of blue. So usually underneath blue, I put like a burnt orange because orange and blue kind of are opposites. So you guys that follow me and have done this before, you know my recipe for burnt orange is alizarin crimson and Hansa yellow opaque. I really like those 2 mixed together. It just makes a really nice kind of rust color. And so we're going to put that in for the background. So I'm watering it down. And I'm just going to wash it in. Yeah, a little more Hansa yellow. I'm going to make my background a little bit lighter on the right side because the right side is going to be a lighter blue in the end, and I'll wash it in a little bit darker on the left side because I know that my background on the left side will be a little bit darker. So just kind of loosely throwing this in. I switched to a bigger brush. I have a 7 now, still using a flat tip brush. So we're going to just throw this color down. Don't worry about getting it like perfectly at the edge of the tulips. It's actually better if it's kind of loose and sloppy because that's going to soften those edges and not make them so meticulously sharp because we actually don't want that. A little bit of blue there. We want to leave it loose. So I start loose in the underpainting in order to stay loose in the end. Okay, so over here where it's going to be a dark blue, I'm going to add a little more alizarin crimson and just put my wash in a little bit darker there. Just going right over those shadows that I found before. So there is our underpainting wash for the background. Now for the yellow picture, I'm going to do purple underneath that because yellow and purple are pretty much opposites. So I love Permanent Violet Dark by Golden. I've heard that this color is hard to find right now though. So if you don't have Permanent Violet Dark, you could replace or you could make a purple using quinacridone magenta and a little bit of blue. So probably either phthalo blue or like an ultramarine blue. I'm using the Permanent Violet Dark because I happen to have it. And I better order some if I happen to find it because everybody says they're having trouble finding it. Let's see, Judy says, don't forget the pitcher handle hole. Yeah, that's right here. I got it in there. It's orange, but thank you. That might not look like it's the hole, but it's right there. So now I'm gonna wash over the pitcher with my purple. So I'm just going to put this color in. This is the Permanent Violet Dark. A little chunk of paint there. And I'm actually just gonna do this purple over the Greenery too, just to make it easier. Wash that in over the Greenery. And the handle. Yeah, we're gonna do all that purple. And I think I'm also gonna put it inside of this flower because the inside is kind of like a yellow tone. So I'm just gonna find that hole in the middle of the flower and wash that in with the purple too. Okay, so now everything that's left is mostly pink tones, right? And so normally the opposite of pink would be green, but I don't think I want to do green. I think I want to do blue, just because. So I'm going to use Phthalo Blue Green Shade by Golden, which is a super duper strong color. So you just need a little bit of it and wash in with some water. Let's see, Bill says, do you ever paint a picture with the color wheel opposites and leave it as you're finished painting? I think I might have done that in college. I think that was maybe an exercise for a painting, but I haven't done that lately. I think that would be kind of an interesting idea. All right, so I'm just washing this blue in over the flowers. Got another little area up there where it's like repelling the paint for some reason. Yeah, just gonna wash it in over all of our pink flowers. And kind of think about the areas that you know are going to be really light and don't put the blue really heavy there. Like this petal I know is very light, it's almost white, so I don't want to put my blue down just too heavy there because then I'm fighting it. So I kind of think about that when I'm doing the underpainting, that the tone doesn't matter, but the value does. So value is light and dark. All right, so that is my underpainting. My paints are starting to kind of fall down a little bit with gravity, so it might be getting a little bit lighter in some places, but doesn't really bother me. All right, so now we're gonna start layering in the overpainting. So at this point, you want to make sure that your paint that you're layering on top of is not wet, because if it is, your colors are gonna mix together and then you're just gonna be creating mud. So normally, if I'm just doing this on my own, I'd probably let this sit for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and let it dry. But since we're doing this as demo, I'm not gonna do that. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna start up here because I can feel that my background is pretty much dry. So I'll mix up my blue for the background, and probably by the time I layer that in, I'll be able to start working on some other places here. Bill says, is the paint mixed with water in the tray? They almost look like watercolors. Yeah, so I mix in these little puddles. I always put my fresh colors in these small little wells, and then I like to mix in these puddles because I do use so much water. But part of why I like the golden fluid acrylics so much is they do kind of work like watercolor when you want them to. There's so much pigment there that they're very staining. It's very nice. I have some drips I'm just catching here. Okay, so let's make the blue for the background. And I'm going to use phthalo blue and a little bit of white and a little bit of Payne's gray to kind of dull it down a little bit because the phthalo blue itself is just a little too intense. And now I'm also going to mix some glaze in here, some medium. I am using Liquitex glazing medium in a matte, but you could use any brand. It really doesn't matter. I'm not picky about this. Let's see. Sharon said, I find your process fun to watch. This is every Monday at 5. Yes, it is, Sharon. Every Monday. And actually, if you go back on my website, you can find all of the paint alongs. So you can still get the downloads for all of them. There's about a dozen of them now. And then you can go back and watch the replay. So yes, if you need some more before next week, you can find my old ones. Okay, so let's start with this blue. So this, again, is Payne's gray, phthalo blue, white, and glaze. And I'm just going to put some big fat brush strokes down up here, and I'm going to leave some of my rust color poking through. I always say start by leaving more of the underpainting because you can always cover it up later, but it's really hard to bring it back. Okay, so got a little bit in there. Over here it gets darker and here it gets lighter. I'm gonna go lighter first. So I'm gonna add a little bit more white in there to brighten it up just a little bit. Maybe a little more glaze. And do a couple lighter brush strokes there. Maybe 1 or 2 up here too. You see how I'm kind of changing the direction of my brush strokes? And I'm just letting, like, you see these big fat strokes. Thank you, Kathy, very much. Kathy says Allie's a generous teacher. I appreciate that, Kathy. Okay, so now let's make this dark color over here on the left. So it's going to be the same 3 colors, but it's going to have more of the Payne's gray and the phthalo, so less of the white. So I'm just going to go to a new spot on my palette here and just grab a little bit of it. And I'm still going to put some glaze in there because that's going to allow my underpainting to show through. So it's Payne's gray, phthalo blue, tiny bit of white, and glaze now. And I'm just going to put a few brush strokes of this over my dark tones here. Remember, leave some of that nice chocolatey, warm underpainting over there, kind of poking through, because that's going to make the overpainting pop. That's why we do the opposite color underpainting, because it makes the later tones stand out even more. I'm going to put maybe a little bit more of the blue right here. Just on mine, I needed to get a little bit more in there. Okay, so I'm good with that for right now. Why don't we start, let's see, I think this is, the yellow is probably dry enough to put the yellow picture in, so let's do that. So let's start by putting the dark tones on the picture first, then we'll put the highlights in. So let's make the dark shadow on the picture using Hansa Yellow and alizarin crimson. Actually, we might only need to do those 2 colors. That might be it. Hansa Yellow and alizarin crimson. I think that'll work. I'll put a little glaze in there. And yeah, we'll just do that right over what we have. So we're just looking for those dark shadows on the yellow picture. And we're not covering up all of the purple. So I always really stress that. It's very tempting to try to cover up all the purple, but we want to leave some of it because it's interesting. Okay, I think that's all really the dark shadows. Yes. It is. Okay, so now I'm gonna wash my brush because I don't wanna have that color in my yellow that I'm making. So my yellow, I'm gonna mix it in a new spot here. I'll do it over here. I'm gonna do it with Hansa Yellow Opaque, a little bit of Pyrrole Red Light. I like these two colors mixed together because it makes a very nice kind of warm orangey tone. And a little bit of white to lighten it up a little bit. So it's Hansa Yellow Opaque, Pyrrole Red Light, and white. And then we'll put a little glaze in there too. Okay, and we will use this for the bright highlights on the picture. And again, we're not mixing it all. We are just laying these colors down in the places where we see highlight. Now this is not as bright as this. I'm gonna put this in the brightest areas first and then maybe dull it out a little. I might need a smaller brush while I'm trying to get this in there. Okay, we have kind of a highlight along the edge of the picture here. A little bit right there. And I guess we have a little bit of that yellow inside this flower too. So I'm just gonna drop a little bit of that in there for right now. A couple strokes in there. And oh, we've got some yellow right here on the other side of that petal. And for right now, I'm just gonna put a little bit in this stem. I'm gonna make that stem a little bit more green, but for right now, I just wanted to get some in there. Okay, now I'm gonna add a little bit more of the red, and I'm gonna put this little rim there, because I want that rim to be a pinch darker. So I put a little bit more of the Pyrrole Red Light in there. And I'm just gonna get that stroke in there. Okay, maybe put one right there, and maybe one right there. Okay, I'm good with the picture for now. I'll probably add a little more detail to that later, but we've got the basic shapes in there, and I want to move on and start putting the color on our tulips. Let me know if you guys have anything you're wondering about as we're working here. Just realized the shape of mine is a little weird right there. I need to fix that. Okay. All right, so what colors are we going to use for these tulips? So let's start up here. This tulip is a little bit more of like a warmy red tone, whereas this one over here, actually all of these are a little bit more of like magenta tones. So let's do this one first because we're going to treat that one a little bit differently. So we're going to make this one, we're going to start pulling out some highlights, and we're going to make a pink that we will make from Pyrrole Red Light and white. Oh, this is dry right here. I don't ever clean my palettes, you guys. That's why there's like all these different colors on my palette, because I just wait for the pink to dry and then I peel it out. All right, so this is Pyrrole Red Light and white. And I'm just going to drop this into some of those areas of highlight, but we really, really, really want to make sure we leave some of that blue because it's really going to pop against this kind of like coral color. So force yourself to leave some of that underpainting. I probably need to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to do that. I still have my number 7. I'm going to go back down to my 4. Okay, so again, Pyrrole Red Light and white. And I'm just looking for these highlights. And I'm just kind of finding my shape, and I'm laying down the stroke, and I'm not going back over it. Of course, then I just did. But what I'm trying to say is that's how I get like these very deliberate brush strokes. I just find the shape, lay it down, and don't second guess. Okay, so I think that's kind of like the very brightest areas. So now I'm going to add a little bit more red to it, a little bit more of the pyrrole red. I'm gonna put some of that into some of the areas that are a little bit more of shadow. So I'm adding more pyrrole red light to my mixture, and I'm also gonna add a little bit of glaze to it now because I'm gonna let a little bit more of that blue come through. And so I see here on this petal, I've got some shadow here. So these aren't the very darkest shadows, like in here where that's going to be quite a bit darker, and even like on the edge here. So this is kind of like the in-between. So that's kind of how I create form. I make like a gradient of steps. So you have your darkest darks, your lightest lights, and then you kind of have some steps in the middle. All right, speaking of the darkest darks, I'm going to make a new dark. I'm going to move to a new spot on my palette, and I'm going to use magenta, the quinacridone magenta, and a little bit of the pyrrole red. And I'm actually not going to put any white in there. I'm just going to add a little bit of glaze. So the magenta and the pyrrole red. And I'm going to use that to kind of pop in to these very darkest areas. I need a little more pyrrole red in there, I think. So I don't have any white in this mixture. This is just going to be a real deep, dark lipstick red. And that's going to make those other areas really jump out, I think. I hope. Yeah. Some dark in there. Okay. So actually, now that I've got this dark red, I see that this tulip that's kind of behind this one down here, this shadow is pretty similar. So I'm going to drop that in too. So whenever I mix a color, I always just kind of jump around the canvas and see where else do I see this color that I can drop it in. And I see some of it up on this petal too. So this is just the quinacridone magenta and the pyrrole red. And we've got a petal up here. We've got that deep dark color. We've got some of that color going on inside of this one. And a little bit on the edge here. And we've got some on here too. I'm gonna add a little more magenta now to it because I feel like this one's even more magenta right there. So I'm adding a little more magenta, and I'm gonna drop that in on the shadow there. Little whoopsie. I don't need my panel to go flying off on me here. A little bit right here. Okay. So now we need to start doing some highlights on these other ones. So I think the highlights are going to be just the magenta and white. I think I'm going to try that without any of the pyrrole. So we're gonna do magenta, and that's dirty there. I need a clean spot over here. Magenta and white, we're gonna start putting the highlights in. So, ooh, yeah, that's gonna look good. And these aren't the very brightest highlights. They're gonna go a notch brighter, but I'll just layer the notch brighter on top of this. I want to get some clean glaze in there. I'm going to add a little bit of glaze to this to let some more of that blue poke through. And I'm kind of like thinking about the direction of the petals as I'm laying down my brush strokes and kind of the direction of the little veins that are inside of them. So I'm just kind of thinking about that and making it flow with the shape of the brush strokes. I was really excited about this one. I guess I still have to do kind of my yellow center in there. I still have it as the purple underpainting. Okay, so now I'm going to add more white to it because these areas are really pretty bright. So I'm still using magenta and white, I'm just adding more white to it now. And we're just gonna go a notch brighter. So why don't we start over here? Just kind of, you wanna make sure, see my first layer's not dry, that's part of the problem. I want that first layer to be dry so I can just layer on top of it. I might have to go somewhere else. We'll do this over here. And over here. This petal has been missing for a while. We need to get it in there. And again, you guys, this is still just magenta and white. I'll put these brighter highlights in. Wish this was a little bit more dry, but it's okay. Okay. I'm gonna go in and get this center because it's throwing me off that I still have the center of this one as purple. So I'm gonna just make that center color. Let's see, we're gonna make that using Hansa yellow and alizarin crimson, which we did before, and a little bit of white. Hansa yellow, alizarin crimson, white. And I'm gonna throw a little glaze in there. I just want to drop that in. So this is kind of a sandy tone. All right. We need to put some greenery in here. So let's start with the darker greens. And so we're going to make that green using phthalo green blue shade and a little bit of Hansa yellow opaque. Actually, a lot of Hansa yellow opaque. But we need to dull it down, so we're gonna add some pyrrole red to it, because otherwise it's just gonna be like this green that gives you a headache. So I always dull my greens down, like when they're natural greens. It's kind of one of my pet peeves is when greens in florals are like this green that would never happen in nature. So I always just kind of err on the side of more of like an olive green. So we're gonna start with those dark tones. And I'm even making mine a little bit more olive than what I see in the image because I prefer the olive green. I just feel like it's easier on your eyes. So that stroke in, there's another one right there. And now we need to go make a brighter green for the highlight. So now we're going to add some more Hansa yellow into it. and a little bit of white to lighten it up a little bit. So I'm using that same recipe of the olive green, but I'm just adding more Hansa yellow and more white to make that brighter tone. And I'm gonna put that over where this stem is, and then this one is pretty strong. And we've got a little bit of highlight right there, a little bit right there. Okay, I think that's good. We've got some bright yellow little windows poking through between the stems, and also it's kind of brighter yellow right here and right here. So I'm gonna make a bright yellow using just Hansa yellow and white, I think. I'm gonna try that out, see if I like it. Just Hansa yellow and white. My white's a little bit contaminated, and so is my Hansa yellow. I'm gonna add some more. Sometimes when you're doing these really bright colors, if your paint is a little contaminated, it's really gonna show. So sometimes if you want it to really pop, you have to just get some fresh paint. Because if it's got a color that's gonna dull it down, it just kills it. Okay, yeah, that looks good. That really bright yellow is gonna give us some separation here between our stems. Got a little window right there. And we've got some right here. That's gonna make this front flower kind of jump towards us, having that bright color on the edge. And let's put a little highlight on this stem too. I think that'll look good. Yeah. We're moving along. I'm probably getting over on time. Oh, good. I have 10 more minutes. Nice. I'm always afraid I'm going over. I started rushing because I thought I was babbling again. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. Heather says it looks amazing. When those little pops come in, that pulls it together. So I can see as I'm looking on the screen, what we really need to do is start bringing out these brightest highlights. So I was waiting for this to kind of set up, and now it is. So let's go back to our mixture that was the magenta and the white, and we're just gonna crank it up a notch. I need some clean white. If your golden tubes get clogged, I always have a needle on hand to clear the hole. Okay, so we're gonna do magenta and white, just with more white this time. It's gonna be like mostly white, just a little bit of magenta, and we're gonna bring out these really bright areas on the petals. So let's see, the brightest one's probably right here. And we've got some bright areas there. Kind of have a bright little flap at the edge of that one that I want to catch. And it's pretty bright right there. I think this particular paint along is a good exercise in the loose brush strokes, because with these big petals, it's really nice to just kind of lay down these big fat strokes. And I know that's something that I hear from a lot of you, that it's something that you would like to grow in and get better at, that you want to just, you know, not overthink it, but just lay down these strokes. So this is probably a good paint along if you're doing this one. Or if you're thinking about it, if loose brush strokes is something that is on your radar and something you want to get better at, this would be a good one to try. Okay, so we got those brighter tones on these. I'm liking that. Now I think we need the brighter tones on this one. However, I want to switch. Remember when we used the Pyrrole red light and white on this one? So we're going to do our bright highlights with that as well. So we will find a new spot to work here and do just white and Pyrrole red light for those highlights. And it's gonna be mostly white to really get these to stand out. Yeah, those are popping now. And you see how I'm not putting like the same highlight on every petal. That's the thing about highlights and shadows. Like if you do it in one place, it doesn't mean it should go everywhere because the light's not gonna fall the same on all the petals. And if you do kind of put like equal amount of highlight on all the petals, that's kind of just like a giveaway that it's not really looking that natural. All right. And now, just because I like to have kind of colors bounce off of each other, I'm gonna take a little bit of this warm tone. I'm gonna put a little more Pyrrole Red in there, and I'm just going to put it on some of the other petals, just to kind of bounce my colors. I'm gonna put a little stroke on there, maybe a little dash of it underneath here, because colors always reflect off of each other. So that's something to think about in your paintings, that you don't just want to have like this one flower with these colors, but we really want to bounce the colors around. I'm going to put a little more Pyrrole Red in there, and I'm going to put a little detail in the center of this one with some of that red. And maybe a little, where else do I want to put it? Maybe just a little dash right there. Yeah, like that. And now, because we have this blue background, I want to do some blue sparkle kind of going around the flowers. You guys know I love doing that. And I like to kind of save it for the end because it just gives like this pop. So I'm going to do my blue sparkle with phthalo blue and white. And I'm going to add a little glaze to it, thin it out a little bit. And I'm not going to put this everywhere, but I am going to just kind of drop it in a few little edges that I want to make kind of glow. So I kind of feel like underneath right here, the blue is kind of piercing through, so I'm going to poke some of it in there. So I'm just going to kind of dance this around some of the edges. And we've got some of it up here too. I might add a little more white to it. I'm making this a little brighter than what I see the background, but that's okay. I just kind of want to make it glow a little bit over here. Maybe I'll put some of this in up here to lighten it up a little more. I think I need my bigger brush, I want to make that not such a sharp transition. So I'm going to add a little glaze, a little bit more of the phthalo blue, thin it out. Now I've got my bigger brush, and I'm just going to do a couple little fat dashes of it to kind of make that make a little more sense with my background that I've put in already. So now it's a little bit more of a gradient. I do see some kind of purple in the background here, and so I'm kind of tempted to put a little bit of that in. I don't know, I'm torn. I'm gonna try it. So let's see, I'm gonna make a purpley blue using a little bit of that permanent dark violet and a little bit of phthalo blue and a little bit of white. So it's gonna be like a kind of periwinkle type blue. And a little more white, I think. And we'll see. Maybe you guys could let me do it first, and then if you don't like it, you don't have to put it on yours. But I think that blue will look kind of, this kind of purpley blue will look kind of nice against what we've got going here. This is one of those colors that when I put a filter on this photo, it really popped out, and it wasn't really there before. But sometimes the filter will bring out some interesting colors. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I think I like that little bit of purple. I'll just do a little dash of it right there. I don't want to do it in too many places. Yeah, let's just leave that. Okay, just kind of going around at what I want to do last wraps. You know, I think I would like to put a few more areas of like deep magenta on this one. So I'm gonna go in with just, I think I might just go in with straight magenta. I have just a pinch of white because my paint was contaminated. I probably would have just done straight magenta, but I'm just gonna drop that in to a few of the kind of dark areas here on this one. Oh, there's a little dip in this petal that I kind of lost. Maybe I can bring that back because that little dip is kind of nice. Yeah, it's kind of there. And a little swoop on the edge of this one. I kind of lost my edge there, so I'll use that to bring it back. A little bit in there. So this is just straight magenta. I've got like a tiny bit of white in here, but that was really just kind of an accident. Just kind of pushing these dark tones. And this magenta is such a pretty color that I like to kind of layer it sometimes on top of the lighter colors because it has this really great like staining glaze effect. It's just really very pretty. Yeah, and that's kind of just maybe enough. So I think one of the last things I want to do is I just want to pump up the little black pieces in the center of this one. So I'm going to switch down to a smaller brush, and I'm going to make that black using alizarin crimson and Payne's gray, same color recipe that we used for our shadows originally. So that really just makes a very dark purple, but that will work just fine for that little detail there in the center. So I'm just going to clean that up. So I like to work loose, but sometimes with these little details, I get down there and I get pretty specific because I want to get that in just right. And maybe I'll use that same dark to just put a little shadow in here on the leaf. We've got kind of a dark shadow right there. Something dark right here. So you might notice how what I do is I kind of save my lightest lights and my darkest darks until the end. And once I've kind of got those middle shapes figured out, then this it becomes easy to figure out where these dark tones and light tones go, and then it all just starts to make sense. And put a little shadow in there. And we're just about done, guys. I'm gonna add a little more alizarin crimson and maybe just pump up the shadow on the edge of the picture here. Just kind of cleaning up that shape. Sometimes, you know, I just have to switch down to a smaller brush and just kind of tweak my edges a little bit. They got a little too loose. Just kind of clean them up here and there. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this one. If you are watching this piece and you are not an artist, you just like watching it be created, I think that's pretty awesome. And I should let you know that whenever I do my Monday night paint-alongs, I always post the painting for sale in my Etsy shop the next day. So if you are interested, you can check there and you can find this one for sale along with all my other paint-alongs. All right. I think we are pretty much there. I think I have one little yellow highlight on the edge of the picture that I want to just drop in right there. Maybe I don't, a little bit. There's a little highlight right there. Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna overwork this if I keep going, so I need to stop. Sometimes I tell you guys that I need to listen to my own advice. I'm putting a little bit of that bright yellow in the center here. I kind of like it. It's making the center kind of glow. Yeah, I like that. Okay, we're gonna call this one done. Thank you everyone who watched this paint along. I appreciate it. Just looking at your comments here. Thank you, Janine. Thank you, everybody. And of course, as always, if you are interested in painting this, you can still get the downloads on my website, Allie K Studio. And you can always watch this as a replay. It'll be posted here on my Facebook page under the videos tab. And I also put it on my YouTube channel on Tuesdays. So you can do that. And of course, I always appreciate you guys sharing these demos. So if you would be willing to hit that share button, I'm always very grateful. All right, you guys have a great night. I will see you next week. And also don't forget to check out my new online class, Digital Editing Basics. It is a painter's guide to Photoshop and more. And you can get intro pricing through March 14th. So you gotta hurry up if you wanna do that. All right, thanks guys, take care, bye-bye.